Mike is standing in a hospital parking lot in Columbus, Ohio, holding a bill for $11,000. He became a father 20 minutes ago. 4,000 miles away, his old college roommate, Lucas, is standing at a gas station outside Munich, watching the pump tick past $8 a gallon before the tank is even full. Same week, same milestone, actually. Lucas became a father 3 days earlier. He just hasn't gotten a single bill for it yet. That's the thing about comparing Germany and the US. It's not that one country is cheap and the other expensive. It's that they're both. Depending on what you're buying, some things here cost a fraction of what they do back home. Others will make your eyes water, and knowing which is which before you assume anything can be the difference between saving thousands and losing them. I'm Justin. I've lived here in Germany for over 12 years. Married in, raised kids in, paid taxes in. So when I give you numbers, it's not a tourist's 2-week guess. It's over a decade of actual receipts. If that's useful to you, stick around and subscribe, because this is what I do every week. The popular assumption is simple. Europe equals expensive, so budget accordingly across the board. The reality is messier and more interesting than that. Germany runs on a different set of priorities than the US does, and that means some of the biggest expenses in an American's life practically disappear here, while things you'd consider cheap and basic back home turn into genuine sticker shock. To be fair to anyone who assumes Europe is just pricier across the board, they're not wrong about everything. The overall tax and insurance burden here is real. Income tax plus mandatory contributions can eat 40% or more of a paycheck before you ever see it. Compare take-home pay alone, and Germany looks brutal on paper. But take-home pay isn't the full story, because a lot of what Americans pay for separately, Germans have already paid for through those deductions. The real comparison isn't paycheck versus paycheck. It's paycheck plus expenses, side by side. So let's start with where Germany wins. First, having a baby. In the US, the average vaginal delivery with no insurance runs around $15,700, closer to $29,000 for a C-section. And even with solid employer insurance, families still average around $2,700 out of pocket on top of thousands more in total pregnancy-related spending. In Germany, if you're on public health insurance, which is mandatory and which almost everyone has, childbirth is free, not discounted, free. Prenatal visits, delivery, hospital stay, postnatal care, all covered. Mike's $11,000 bill isn't an exaggeration. It's roughly the US average for a complicated delivery. Lucas paid nothing for his daughter. Second, college. Public universities across nearly every German state charge zero tuition. You pay a semester administrative fee, usually 250 to 350 euros, and that covers the whole term. A handful of states charge non-EU students more, but for Germans and EU citizens, university is essentially free. Meanwhile, a single year at a private US university now runs $60,000 or more, and even in-state public tuition adds up to tens of thousands across 4 years. That's not a difference of degree. That's the difference between a car payment and a mortgage. Third, prescription drugs. Insulin is the cleanest example. In the US, the list price for a vial of one common brand recently sat above $137. In Germany, an independent panel negotiates a maximum reimbursable price with insurers, so that same vial runs closer to $55 at list price. And German law caps out-of-pocket costs for chronic conditions at 1% of household income. So most people with diabetes here barely feel the cost at all. Fourth, getting around. A single monthly pass called the Deutschlandticket currently costs 63 euros, a bit over $65, and it covers every bus, tram, subway, and regional train in the entire country. Not just your city, the entire country, coast to coast. Compare that to New York, where 4 weeks of subway and bus access alone runs about $150 for one city. And fifth, maybe the most dramatic gap of all, childcare. A full-time public daycare spot in Germany typically runs somewhere between 100 and 400 euros a month, and in cities like Berlin, it's free entirely. Parents just cover the cost of meals. In the US, a single parent in a major city can easily pay $2,000 a month for one child. That's not a gap. That's an entire extra rent payment. Now flip to the other side of the ledger. Because Lucas wasn't wincing at that gas pump for nothing. Regular gasoline in Germany runs around $8.30 a gallon right now. more than double the roughly $3.60 Americans are paying. The difference isn't really the oil, it's tax. Somewhere between 40 and 60% of what you pay at a German pump is excise duty and value-added tax versus roughly 12% tax built into the average American gallon. Cars follow the same logic. That same value-added tax gets applied to the full sticker price at 19%, which is a big part of why a Toyota Corolla Hybrid, starting around $26,000 in the US lists for the equivalent of roughly $38,000 here before you've added a single option. Running your home is next. German electricity has historically cost more than double US rates, which is exactly why you'll notice something odd if you visit. Barely any German homes have a clothes dryer. Only around 40% of households own one versus 83% in the US. It's not tradition, it's math. Running a dryer regularly is expensive enough that most people just hang the laundry instead. Same story with air conditioning. Roughly 90% of American homes have it. In Germany, it's somewhere around 6 to 8%. Thick masonry walls, exterior shutters, and a climate that historically didn't demand it explain most of that. But when Germans do install central cooling, they're looking at 2,000 to 5,000 euros just for installation, on top of electricity that already costs more per kilowatt hour than what Americans pay. And then there's the small, almost funny one. Anything distinctly American on a grocery shelf here. A single 1 kilogram jar of a familiar American peanut butter brand can run 11 or 12 euros, sometimes more, compared to a few dollars for the same jar back home. It's a small tax on nostalgia. After 12 years, trust me, it adds up. Here's the deeper pattern once you zoom out. Germany isn't simply cheap, and it isn't simply expensive. It's collective. The categories where Germany crushes it are the ones the whole country pays into, together whether or not you personally use them this year: healthcare, education, childcare, transit. The categories where Germany stings are the ones tied to individual consumption and personal choice: your car, your gas tank, your dryer, your grocery cart. Line those two lists up and the pattern isn't random at all. It's a country that decided which needs get shared and which ones stay yours alone. If you're actually planning a move here and trying to get a real handle on where your money's going between two currencies, the banking side is where most Americans overcomplicate things. I'll drop a link below to the app I'd actually recommend for managing euros and dollars side by side. So back to Mike and Lucas. Mike's $11,000 hospital bill is real, and it's not going away. But if he ever complains about gas prices back in Ohio, he might want to remember what Lucas never had to pay for his daughter. And Lucas, wincing at $8.30 a gallon, by the time he's home, he'll be air drying onesies on a rack instead of running a dryer, holding a transit pass that costs 63 euros and covers his whole family anywhere in the country, and not thinking twice about a hospital bill that will simply never arrive. So here's what to actually do with this. 1. When you compare cost of living between the two countries, don't just look at price tags, look at what's bundled into your taxes versus what you pay separately, because a big chunk of the real picture is invisible on any single receipt. 2. If healthcare, education, or childcare are major line items in your life, those are exactly the categories where Germany will save you real money, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars over a few years. 3. If driving, cooling your home, or specific American brands matter to you, budget for those to run noticeably higher here, not lower. 4. Before you assume either country is universally cheaper, run your own numbers against your own actual life. The averages hide exactly the kind of split we just walked through. Mike and Lucas will probably compare notes again in a few years, once the kids are older and the bills, or the lack of them, have had time to add up. Germany isn't cheaper than America. America isn't cheaper than Germany. They're just cheap and expensive in completely different places. If you want more of these real receipts-based comparisons, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments which one on this list surprised you the most.